How are you? You can hear? Do you remember the story of Adam and Chava? They were created by God. They were in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. They were told that they can eat from all the trees except one tree, the tree of knowledge. But they ate from that tree, and they were thrown out of Gan Eden. And were punished. Well, let's take a close look at this story. Adam and Chava were perfect creations. They were perfect. God made them himself. They didn't have a Yetzer Hara. They had no evil inclination. They were pure. They were innocent. They were holy. They didn't have any bad friends. They didn't have difficult childhood. They didn't have mother-in-law problems. They were perfect. And they had only one commandment. Don't eat from that tree. And yet, within an hour, they ate from that tree. The obvious question, how is it possible? How is it possible if God speaks to you personally, it makes no impression? You can disobey him an hour later? Doesn't seem possible. Another problem. God said to Adam, don't eat from this tree. The day you eat from it, you're going to die. So first of all, what kind of threat is death? If you were just created 2 hours ago. Was it really a threat? He didn't want to die? Did he even know what death means? Nobody ever died. But also, when you tell someone, don't touch that, it's not a good psychology to say, because if you touch it, you'll be punished. It's not good psychology. If you want somebody not to touch, then you say, you will never touch that. And that's all. When you say, if you touch it, you'll be punished, then you have weakened your command. You're saying it is possible that you will touch it. It's not good psychology. God said to Adam, don't eat from this tree, and the day you eat from it, you will die. Not even if you eat from it. The day you eat from it, you'll die. That's not good psychology. It's confusing. Another question. God comes to Adam and says, after they ate from it, God comes to Adam and says, you ate from the tree that I told you not to eat? Adam said, it's not my fault. She made me do it. How did he become so corrupt so fast? One more question. Then God said, because you did this, you will have to work very hard to make a living. Having babies is going to be painful. More punishment. But that's not right. You can't make more punishment than you promised. God said the day you eat from it, you'll die. He didn't say you're going to suffer. Now he's adding more punishment after the sin. That's not right. But here's my main question. No matter what happened in Gan Eden with Adam and Chava, why does the Torah tell us this story? Why do we need to know this? It's not a good story. It is the first story of the Torah, and it's very discouraging. So if you're going to teach a little boy the Torah from the beginning, what he's going to hear is that there was a perfect human being who had no problems, no Yetzer Hara, and he had only one command, and he couldn't do it. Now this little boy has many problems. He has a Yetzer Hara, and he has 613 commandments. He can't succeed. So the story is very discouraging. So what is the point of telling such a story? So let's take another look. Tzaddikim, holy souls, when they are born, don't forget where they were before. We don't know where we were before. We don't even remember being a fetus. It wasn't so long ago. It was 9 months. It was wonderful. And as soon as we're born, we forget. We certainly don't remember where we were before we were a fetus. But tzaddikim remember. So Adam and Chava remembered that they were in heaven, and God told them that they need to go down to the lowest world and make the lowest world holy. So when they were created in the Garden of Eden, and God said to them, all the trees you can eat, but this one tree don't eat. The day you eat from it, you'll die. So Adam and Chava were having a conversation. What is our job? We have to make the lowest world holy. Well, all the trees are already holy, kosher, you can eat from it. There's one tree that is not holy, but we're not allowed to eat it. So what's our job? How do we make the world holy? Chava said, God is giving us a choice. Don't eat from the tree and live, or eat from the tree and die. It's not a threat. It's a choice. don't eat from the tree. The day you do eat from it, you'll die. So what do you want to do? So Adam said, if we have to make a choice, then we should not eat it. Chava said, I think we should eat it. It's a choice, and God wants us to eat it. He said, how do you know that? She said, because if you would listen, that's the first time a wife said that to her husband. If you would listen, you would hear what God is saying. He said, what? That's the first time a husband said, what? Eat from it and die means that we are not in the lowest world. We have no job here because we're not in the lowest world. We are in a world where nobody dies. There is a lower world where people die. That's where we have to go. So God wants us to eat from the tree and go into the lowest world. And there we'll make it holy. So Adam said, if God wanted us in that world, then he would have created us there. He put us here. He wants us here. So Chava said, this is how God works. God takes you up to the last step. But then the final step, he wants you to choose. And Adam was convinced. So they ate from the tree. Now God comes to Adam and says, you ate from the tree that I told you not to eat from. How did you know that that's what you were supposed to do? So Adam said, I didn't know. She knew. See, that sounds much better, no? So God said, very good. Now, let me tell you what the world outside of Gan Eden, how it works, what it's like. In that lower world, you have to work hard to make a living. Having children is painful. Giving birth is painful. That's not punishment. It's a description of the lower world. So, we now have a very different story. This is not the story of two perfect people who couldn't obey a single commandment. It's the whole story of our history. Why are we here in this world, in this condition? Because Chava understood that God wants us to go down to the lowest world and not be afraid, and know that we have the power to make the lowest world holy, godly. Well, let's think about it another way. Since Adam and Chava were perfect, they really didn't care whether they lived or died, whether they were in Gan Eden, outside of Gan Eden. To them it was all the same. What they were worried about is their children. What kind of children should we want? The choice is don't eat from the tree. Stay in Gan Eden. All your children will be tzaddikim, perfect, saintly, forever. Or eat from the tree, go out of Gan Eden into the lower world, and your children will sin. And after a long time, they will realize what is true and good, and they will do Teshuva. They will become observant, committed to God's commandments. Adam said, I would like to have my children to be tzaddikim. Chava said, there is something better. To be about Teshuva is better. I want my children to be Balei Teshuva. When Chava convinced Adam that Teshuva is higher than tzaddik, then Adam ate from the tree. And then God said, how did you know that a Baal Teshuva is higher than a tzaddik? It says in the Gemara, but the Gemara had not been written yet. So Adam said, I didn't know. She knew. And why did she know? Because she is a mother. And when it comes to her children, she knows more than the biggest tzaddik. So if you're wondering why we are here in this terrible world, with all our problems, the whole mess, blame it on Chava. It's all her fault. Now, I think she knew that her children would be Balei Teshuva, but she also knew that it would take 5,772 years and a few months. But she wasn't frightened by 5,000 years. To her, 5,000 years was nothing. She could have lived forever. So what's 5,000 years? So Chava was right. And now it is our job to succeed in her plan. And that's why when we get married, one of the brachot, one of the blessings that we say is that God should make us happy. Like the happiness that existed in Gan Eden at the beginning. What was the happiness? Chava saw that her children will be Balei Teshuva, and it made her very happy. Now when we get married, it is our job to finish that project so that Chava will be right. In our generation, there is no other way. There is no way to be Jewish, to serve God. There is no other way except through Teshuva. We think that some people are born religious from birth, and some people have to do Teshuva. It's not correct. No one is born religious. And if they are, then they don't belong here. They should have stayed in Gan Eden. The only way to serve God today is to do tshuva. Even if your mother and father are tzaddikim. There is no way. Only through tshuva. Now, tshuva doesn't mean you have to first do every sin, then you have to regret it, then you have to apologize, and then you have to ask for forgiveness, and then you start doing mitzvahs, and then you're a Baal Tshuva. You don't have to sin to do tshuva. Tshuva means it is completely my choice whether I want to be connected to God or not. It doesn't matter what I was taught, what I was told. It doesn't matter what I saw in my house, my parents, my grandparents. It doesn't matter. It's all up to me. When you choose to have a relationship with God, that is true. When you think you have a relationship and you don't have to choose, that's not true. Today, every child at the age of 10, 11, 12 has to do tshuva. He has to choose for himself. And we shouldn't be frightened that an 11 or a 12-year-old child is already asking questions. Why do I have to? I don't want to. What if I don't? What if I do? That's good. That's called tshuva. And we have to encourage those questions and answer the questions. Not be disappointed that the child is not religious by nature. There is no religious by nature. That's like wanting to be married but not wanting to get married. I just want to wake up married. Have to go make a decision, choose somebody. Why can't I just be born married? Because that's not a marriage. That's not a relationship. What is a relationship? God wants us to be in the lowest world and make the lowest world holy. Why? If you want holiness, put us in the highest world. If you want low, then why should we make it holy? Let's keep it low. But he wants both opposites. Very holy in the lowest world. Why? But that's what marriage is. Marriage means the closest person in your life should be a stranger. Why? See, in the olden days, Adam and Chava's children were born with their wives. They were born married. Why do we have to marry a stranger? Not only a stranger, but somebody from the opposite gender. Men can't even marry men. Well, okay, I don't know. And women can't marry women. And you can't marry the boy or the girl you grow up with, because that's your brother and sister. You have to go find a complete stranger. And that complete stranger becomes your closest relationship. That's called making the lowest world holy. But here's a very important part to this whole teaching. The lowest world means a world where people can hate God. That's the lowest world. Angels always obey God. They can't do anything except what God says. That's a high world. In a low world, we don't obey God. In fact, we can actually hate Him. That's a pretty low world for God. And yet, this is the world that God wants. And this is the world that is supposed to become holy. What do we learn from this? If you want to get married, you have to marry someone and love the person you marry, even though that person can hate you. But when we make an arrangement, I love you, you love me, so we can get married. But on the condition, we'll get married if I love you and you love me. But if I find out in the middle of the marriage that you don't love me, then we're divorced. That's not marriage. That's a business. I'll give you my love, you give me your love. That's not marriage. That's a good deal. When it works. If it doesn't work, it's not a good deal. The nature of love, this is not some religious, spiritual idea. The nature of love. What does it mean to love somebody? First of all, real love is only to someone who can love you back. You can't love a tree. That's not love. Because the tree can't love you back. But when a person can love you back, that means that they could also hate you. If you want a guarantee, you want to marry someone who must love you back, who guaranteed will love you back, then you don't love him or her. If you're not willing to love someone who has free choice to love you or to hate you, then you don't love that person. We love our children, and we know your children can love you, or they can hate you. You still want children? Yes. That's called making the lowest world the highest world. You marry someone who could hate you. And maybe sometimes does hate you. But you make that into a marriage. That's what God's plan is. God asked us to be His people, His chosen people. And He knew that we will love Him sometimes, and we will hate Him sometimes. But He wants us, even when we hate Him. And so our relationship to Him is, you are our God. Do I love you? Let's not talk about that. You know, Rosh Hashanah is coming. Let's be nice. I don't know if I love you. But you are God. And you created me. And you asked me to marry you. And to be your children or your people or your wife. And I agree. And even when I don't like you, even when I hate you, I am yours and you are mine. Quick story. There was a woman in Russia under communism who was left without a husband in a non-Jewish village where they were hiding with an 8-year-old little boy. And she didn't have anything to feed him. There was no money. She needed to go into the big city where she had some friends or family to get money to feed her child. The boy couldn't travel because he had no papers. So she had to leave him in the village. To make a long story short, she put him into an orphanage where he was the only Jewish boy. And the children made fun of him that he didn't eat the meat and he didn't eat the soup because it wasn't kosher. Anyway, the mother was supposed to come back after 4 days. But nothing worked according to schedule. So a week went by, she didn't come back. 2 weeks went by, she still didn't come back. Now the orphanage took the children for a hike. And it was a hot summer day. The children were thirsty. So they went into a farm. And they asked the farmer if he has something for the children to drink. The farmer brought out a bottle of milk, cold milk, and he gave each child a glass, and he filled it with milk. Now this little boy, he was 8 years old, he was about to drink the milk, and he heard the farmer say to the leader that it's very, very good for the children that they stopped at his farm, because nothing is so healthy for young children like horse's milk. So this little boy didn't know what to do. Horse's milk is not kosher. But if he says I can't drink it, it'll make a whole discussion, a whole argument, they'll make fun of him. But he's thirsty. But it's not kosher. But he doesn't want to make a whole issue. What should he do? He finally decided that he's not going to drink it. And he made believe that the glass slipped from his hand and spilled. So now they're coming back to the orphanage, and his mother had returned from her trip. She's standing in front of the orphanage waiting for her son. And when the little boy saw his mother, he started running towards her. And he shouted. He said, "Mama, I'm still yours. I didn't drink it. Which means that the reason he didn't drink the milk is not because he was so holy, not because he was so religious. He was 8 years old. The reason he didn't drink the milk is because he was his mother's child. And he wants to be able to say, I am yours. I didn't break our relationship. I didn't leave the relationship. You don't drink it, I don't drink it. Because I'm yours. Not because I'm a tzaddik. This is the wisdom of an 8-year-old. But this is what we should be thinking on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. We come on Rosh Hashanah to God and we say, I'm not a tzaddik. I'm not so religious. I'm not perfect. But you are mine and I am yours. Still, after 3,000 years, I'm still yours. I never quit. I never stopped being Jewish. I don't know how to be a good Jew. I wanted to drink the non-kosher milk, but I never stopped being yours. And that's why in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, what we say over and over, Ki onu amecha, we are your people. I didn't say we were good people, but we are your people. Anu banecha, we are your children. Maybe not such good children, but we're your children. And you are our father. Maybe not such a good father, but you are our father. That's called tshuva. That is the feeling of a Baal tshuva. A tzaddik feels, I'm good, I'm holy, I understand God, we're best friends. A Baal tshuva feels, I don't know if I'm good or not good. I just want to be yours. In our generation, we can't be good Jews. If you think you're a good Jew, maybe you haven't read enough. I saw a sign once in an office, in a factory. It said, if you can be calm under these circumstances, you probably don't understand the circumstances. If you feel like you're a good Jew, you probably don't know how to be a good Jew. Because to be a good Jew, it's almost impossible. It's impossible. There's so much that you need to do. And the same is true if you want to be a good wife or a good husband. It's not possible. To be a good husband, it's not possible. To be a good wife, that's more than human. To be a good daughter to your parents, you'll never make it. Because no matter how good you are, it's not good enough. Not because your mother says so. God said, it's never good enough. You want to be a good son? You can't. You can't. You want to be a good mother? Don't even try. You want to be a good father? Don't do it. Be about tshuva. about Teshuva means, I don't think I'm good, I just want to be yours. You don't have to sin to be about Teshuva. It's a feeling. It's an attitude. Am I a good father? I don't even want to think about it. I just want to be a father to my children. Am I a good son? That's a very dangerous question. It can be very depressing. But I want to be a son. Am I a good Jew? I don't ask that question. But I want to be a Jew. That's a bunch. So this year for Rosh Hashanah, let's try a new approach. Every year we come Rosh Hashanah, we say, this year I'm going to be really good. And it never happens. You know, it's a waste of time. Don't make resolutions that this year you're going to be good. Don't make any resolutions at all. On Rosh Hashanah, tell God, I'm still yours. I always want to be yours. No matter what happens in the coming year, I will always be yours. That's it. That's much better. The same is true in a marriage. You want to be a good wife to your husband. You want to be a good mother to your children. You want to be a good father. Don't kid yourself. On your anniversary, make sure that your husband knows and your wife knows that you want to be hers. You want to be his. Everything else will take care of itself. If you're mine, then love me, hate me. It doesn't matter. You're mine. And that's what's important. Doesn't that sound more realistic? It sounds more true. 2,000 years of exile, we can't be good, but we're still his. That is absolutely amazing. For that, we deserve every blessing. A good, sweet year in every way, because we're his, and he is ours. Make sense? ¿Está claro? Any questions? Any complaints? Any answers? If you have a minute, I want to tell you another story. Yes? There's time? Yeah? A very interesting example. There were 8 women from Canada who asked me to help them with a problem. They all became religious. And their husbands are not happy. So there's problems. And this has been going on for a long time. They want to have some advice how to make their husbands religious. So I said, tell me exactly what the problem is. And they said, our husbands don't want to be religious. I said, that's too vague. Let's talk specifically. You came home to your husband and you said, I want to have a separate set of dishes. Your husband said no. And you're fighting about it. You're getting divorced over this. Because your husband refuses to buy a set of dishes? I don't think so. I can't believe that. Or, you came home from a shiur, from whatever, you got all excited. You came home and you told your husband that you're never going to shop on Shabbos again. And he's upset? I don't think so. So what exactly is the problem? They said, we want to be religious and our husbands don't want to be religious. I said, you're not looking at the picture correctly. I don't even know what religious means. Your husband doesn't want to be religious. It doesn't make any sense. Let me tell you from a man's perspective what your husbands are upset about. You see, you came home and you said to your husband, we have to have separate dishes. Your husband said, we don't have to. You said, no, we have to. He said, no, we don't have to. If you had come home and said, you know, these dishes we've had already a long time, let's buy some new dishes. Your husband would have said, fine. You came home and said, we have to. He said, what do you mean, I don't have to? You said, you have to. And then you didn't say, I don't want to shop on Shabbos. You said, we have to keep Shabbos. He says, we don't have to. It's my house. I don't have to. You said, no, you have to. You said, we have to have separate beds. Go get your own bed. He said, no, I don't want to. You have to. Wait a minute, whose house is this? See, that's what he's upset about. If you said, can you buy me a new set of dishes? You would have bought your dishes. If you would have said, let's stay home on Shabbos and have a Shabbos meal, you would have said, fine. If you would have said, I want my own bed, maybe he wouldn't have been too fine with that. It depends on how you ask. But you came home and said, you have to. All he said was, I'll do it, but I don't have to. That's what started the whole argument. But really, there's something deeper that is bothering your husband. What's really bothering your husband is that you came home so excited. You were shining. You were so excited. And he thought that you were excited about him. And then he finds out that it's not about him at all. It's about God. Well, how is he supposed to compete with God? That's what he's upset about. He's never seen you so excited. And it's not about him. That hurts. That's deep. But that's not really what bothers him. There's something deeper bothering him. This is a male problem. What really is bothering him is this. You came home and said, we have to have dishes. Have to. God said. We have to keep Shabbat. Have to. God said. We have to have separate beds. God said. What's next? Okay, we'll do all that. Fine. Then what? What happens next if God tells you to throw me out because I'm not religious enough for you? What are you going to do? See, that's what really is scary in your husband. He knows he's not good enough. Now all of a sudden you do whatever God says. Well, what if God says throw him out? So I said to these women, I promise not to tell your husband. I'm just curious. If God tells you to throw out your husband, what will you do? So they were sitting quiet. I said, I'm asking you a question. What will you do if God says, throw him out? And they just sat there thinking. I said, what are you thinking? If I was your husband, I would be very upset right now. What are you thinking? One of them said, no, God would never say that. Don't be so sure. And that's not the question. The question is, if God tells you to throw him out, what will you do? They have to think. This is very bad news. There was an actor who, in the character that he played, he was very, very stingy. He loved money, every penny. One time a mugger stopped him in the street with a gun, and he said, your money or your life? He didn't say anything. So the man said, your money or your life? He said, I'm thinking. Not an easy decision. So here, they're sitting and thinking. Now I know why your husband is upset. He doesn't even know whether he's your husband anymore. What should a woman do if God says, dump your husband? Throw him out. Well, in order to know what God wants, we have to look in the Torah. If you look in the Torah, it says that God told Abraham to sacrifice his son. What did Abraham do? He got up early in the morning, and with joy and happiness, he went to sacrifice his son. From this we learn that if God tells you to throw out your husband, you should get up early in the morning and with joy and enthusiasm, you should throw him out. But it's not so simple, because there's another story. There's another story in the Torah. The story is that God said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I am throwing out those people. I don't like them anymore. They're too difficult. The Jewish people. What did Moshe say? If you throw them out, I'm going with them. You're God. You can do whatever you want. You can throw them out. If you throw them out, I go with them. Throw me out too. From this we learn that if God says, dump your husband, well, you have to dump him. But you go with him. So which one is it? Should we learn from the story of Avraham or from the story of Moshe? I guess that depends on how much you like your husband. The story of Avraham does not apply. God came to Avraham and said, bring your son for a sacrifice, not throw him out. Raise him up to a higher level. So Avraham did it. When God came to Moshe, he said, I'm going to throw out those people. I'm not raising them up. So Moshe says, wherever they go, I go. Now if these women would come to their husbands and say, we are very excited about God. We want to do whatever God says. We want to keep kosher and mikveh and Shabbos and everything else. But even if God says that we should throw you out, we will go with you. If they felt that from you, of course they would buy another set of dishes. They'll buy you anything you want. Maybe that's how Chava convinced Adam to eat from the tree. She said, I think we should eat from it. But if you're not going, I'm not going. So, having a good marriage and being a Baal Teshuva are the same thing. One helps the other. Because being married is like making the lowest world the highest world. A complete stranger. And yet, if he gets thrown out, I'm going with him. If she can't go, I don't go. That's a Baal Teshuva. So one guy said to me once, I'm becoming religious. I want to be religious. My wife doesn't want, so I'm divorcing her. So I said, let me see exactly what you're saying. You want to be religious, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to stop doing the one mitzvah that you're doing, which is being married to your wife. So this is how you start becoming religious? You're going backwards. First, I'm going to stop doing the mitzvah I have. Then I'll do many, many mitzvahs. I've heard that before. It doesn't work. The first thing is, do the mitzvah you're doing even better. And besides, when did you become inspired to serve God and to do mitzvah? When you were single? No. When you were single, you were terrible. Now you're married, and you have children, and all of a sudden something happened that inspired you to want to serve God. Don't you see what God is telling you? God didn't inspire you when you were single. He needs you to be inspired as part of a family. That's why it didn't happen until after you were married. If you divorce your wife, God doesn't need your mitzvahs anymore. Because when you're single, God needs you to serve Him as a husband, with a wife, with a family, with children. That's why He waited until you were married before He inspired you to do mitzvah. If you go back to being single, no good. So we have to see that there's a divine plan to every detail of our lives. one woman decided that the first mitzvah she's going to start doing is kashrut. She's going to become kosher. It just so happens that her husband's favorite food is a cheeseburger. It's his favorite food. He lives on it. They got into a big argument and they came for advice. So I said to her, there are 613 mitzvahs. You had to pick the one mitzvah that is hardest for your husband. Start with a different mitzvah. God wants you to come to Him with your husband. What are you doing? So let's make the lowest world holy. We are definitely in the lowest world. The world has never been so low. And this is the world we have to make holy. And the world is so low that it wants to become holy. People don't like themselves. They realize we need something good. We need something high. People want to grow, especially Jews. We don't like a world that is so low. And we get very excited when we find out that it is our mission. We were created and born to make this world better. So let's do it. Let's make our relationships better, our homes better, our community, and the whole world. This is the year. President Obama said, yes, we can. He didn't know what he was talking about, because he can't. But we can. We can. Let's make the world better. Let's have a very, very good, sweet year. The best year when the world finally does what Chava knew we were going to do. Why wait another year? Let's make it this year. Agreed?